So as we're getting ready for the Oscar season, I ran out to check out Anora. This is a new Sean Baker film that tells the story of Anora, a stripper grinding it every night. When one night she meets Vanya, the wealthy son of a Russian archetype who pays to make her his girlfriend for the week. Unexpectedly, the two fall in love and eventually elope. However, that Cinderella story is threatened when Vanya's parents find out. Sean Baker is the writer and director of this film, and Mickey Madison is in the lead role. Sean Baker's approach to Anora is really unique and a little bit different than I actually thought it was going to be, because I watched the trailer for this movie a couple of months ago and I just watched it once, but it was one that really captured my attention and I wanted to see what kind of route they were going to be taking with this story. Sean Baker is a unique filmmaker. He directed Tangerine, The Florida Project, Red Rocket, and out of those, the only one that I've actually seen is The Florida Project. And what I really like about his directing style, what I've seen so far, is that he likes to take these stories and really grind them down to reality in a way where it kind of feels like it's a little bit more fantastical, but it's also grounded down in the real world. And that's exactly what Anora feels like. For the first half of this film, it's filled with a lot of sex and nudity to the point where I kind of felt a little bit dirty just watching it, and I kind of needed a shower after the scenes were done. But we see how Anora is kind of living her life. We see how she entices men to let her give them lap dances in order for her to get tips. We see the mannerisms that she performs on these men in order to entice them into the little green rooms to get the lap dances. And as somebody that has never visited one of these places, Mickey Madison definitely got the mannerisms down. She knew exactly how to portray this character, and she does it so well to the point where it all feels so authentic. For this movie, it's hers. She is somebody that has been around for quite a while. She's most notably known for her performance in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and Scream 5 that came out a couple of years ago. And those were the only films that I've actually seen her in. So seeing her take on this role, it was a little bit different. And I really like that because this movie is all hinged on her. This movie is all on her back. She has to have a range of emotions that she has to carry throughout the entire film. From the moment this movie begins to the moment the movie ends, she's the first person that you see and she's the last person that you see. So she has to ooze not just a lot of charisma whenever she is doing her job as the stripper, but she also has to ooze a little bit of sex appeal to those scenes to make it a little feel a little bit more authentic. And just seeing how everything transpires, I think she did a really good job of giving a wonderful performance that I was not sure if she was going to be able to carry this movie on her own, and she most definitely does because we see as we progress through the entire film her relationship with not just her stripper friends or stripper co-workers, but also the relationship that she develops with Vanya. That relationship had to work in order for the entire film to work, because if that relationship did not work, then I think this movie would have fell apart quite easily. It's one of the most integral moments of this film. Has to range a lot of different emotions from sex appeal to heartbreak to breakdowns to meltdowns to a lot of screamings, and she does that fantastically. If the Oscars were held tomorrow, she would definitely be a nomination for me because she just carries this movie from beginning to end. She is somebody that is going to be out on the prowl. Boy, did she really impress this movie because the first half of this movie is quite different than the last two acts of this film. The first act is a little bit more of Pretty Woman meets Cinderella. She's trying to have this lavish experience with this Russian billionaire and she's partying it up all the time, having sex with him and giving him lap dances. They're trying to build this relationship, but at the same time, she is not trying to really lose who she is in all of this madness. She still knows that she's a stripper. She needs to get paid for the week, and they negotiate a little bit more of that. And just once we get into the last half of this movie, when the relationship starts to evolve and they elope, that's when the movie kind of takes a little bit of a curveball and it goes in such a wild direction that it almost feels like it's just a completely different movie, because not only do you have Mickey Madison in here, but you also have a couple of other characters in here that are really standouts, and I really appreciated what they were trying to go for. You have Vanya's dad's bodyguards or goons that are trying to get Vanya to get this marriage annulled. That's essentially what we have in the last two acts. and just the range of emotions that Mickey Madison is portraying throughout these entire scenes, from not just from the kicking and screaming to the crying, a little bit more of the confusion because she has no idea what's actually going on. There's a lot of emotions that she has to really convey, and she does that so meticulously. It's hard for you not to turn away from the screen because that's just how powerful her performance is. And a lot of that credit has to go to Sean Baker. He does a really good job, not just with the performances that he gets out of his actors, especially the supporting characters, but just the way that he's able to make this movie feel like it's not actually as long as it is, because this movie is about 2 hours and 20 minutes. And there were moments here and there where you started to feel the pacing a little bit, but it never compromised what he was trying to do with this project. He never really, for some people, those 2.5 hours are going to fly just by because it's just a whirlwind of emotions to the point where you start feeling bad for this character, to the point where when you first meet her, she's fine, but you don't really feel all too bad. You like the direction that they're taking her story and her character, especially when it comes down to the relationship between Vanya and Anora. That's what I really was a little bit more gravitated to. And just the way that he's able to switch these characters and really make it a little bit more engaging. That is where it's going to keep a lot of people's attention. It's just the last two acts. There's so many things happening all at once that sometimes it can get a little bit frustrating trying to make everything just a little bit more cohesive and a little bit more digestible. Some people are going to feel the length, but if you are fully invested in the story, in the characters, and the direction that it takes in the last two acts, then these 2.5 hours are going to just fly by for you because you're invested at every single step of the way. And just the cinematography for this movie is just absolutely beautiful, not just with the shots with Anora and Vanya, but also with how he lights the strip club scenes. Those moments are just so mesmerizing and so beautiful. The use of lights, the use of color, the use of music in here is all done to perfection. This isn't going to be for everybody. This is going to be for a certain demographic. If you've enjoyed Sean Baker's last movies, then you're probably going to end up enjoying this movie because it is just absolutely wonderful. There's just something enticing about Sean Baker and the way that he directs this movie, the way that he writes his characters, the way that he uses cinematography, even finding ways to make his movies a little bit more enjoyable, to the point where there are some moments of levity in here where he uses some comedies to really let the moments live, and he really does that in just a wonderful way. And I'd say the last 20 to 30 minutes where you have two characters just talking and just seeing that transpire, it's done in such a beautiful way where there aren't a lot of cuts, and Sean Baker lets you sit with these characters and just take everything in. Take all of the emotions you just barely experience, and you just lets you breathe a little bit, just like Anora. There are a lot of emotions in here. This is a movie that, quite frankly, surprised me coming out because I had some hope for this movie. It looked interesting, but I was a little bit worried with the runtime being 2 hours and 20 minutes. Was this going to feel too long? Was it going to be the right runtime? And for me, it was the right runtime. It flew by for me. There were some pacing issues here and there that didn't really compromise the experience, but could have been dialed down just a little bit more. But overall, this is a really enjoyable movie going into the Oscar season. If you have not checked this film out, run out to check it out because it is just a wonderful film that I really enjoyed. It's wonderful, it's engaging, it's sexy at times, but at the same time, Sean Baker was able to make this movie feel a little bit more grounded, but at the same time, he wasn't able to compromise his vision. But those are my thoughts on Anora. Have you guys checked it out? Is this a movie that will be a contender for the Oscar season coming up with you? Go ahead and drop your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll catch you guys for the next video.